feeding on my tension. My countrymen, they love their fiction. Words upon now, it's made with good intentions.
Kia ora. Good morning. Kia ora ni hao is what I'm trying to make my new introduction to 10200. This is 10200, your weekly current events podcast about all things politics, media, things of this nature. I am one of your four hosts this morning. My name is Philip. I hope you're doing very well. Touch grass, go outside, etc. All of the usual healthy mantras, which we all need to remember in the year of our Lord 2025. Stay sane. We also have Simone. How are you, Simone?
My good friend is Simone, so Talofa. Do people even remember Judith Collins? Oh yeah, she's the AG, never mind.
Retro.
I like that you said before we started, and I was, we'll do it in this order. We'll go, like Pmax first, and then I was like, great.
I didn't say that.
For the first time, Philip's not going to pick on me first, and then it happened. So I don't believe in anything anymore.
This was
That's all I have
recorded.
to say.
If only there was some way to record this conversation so that you could look back and see how wrong you are, Simone. We also have Josephine. How is your morning treating you, Josephine?
A little brutal, waking up before 9 to get on this podcast.
Tough life.
Yeah, I mean, it's a miracle. I'm up before 9 on a Saturday. So, yeah, happy to be here. I like that you've changed your greetings to ni hao. And yeah, so ni hao to everyone.
Kia ora and ni hao is my new, I guess, universal greeting.
Kia ora,
And we have
ni
Pmax. How are you doing, Pmax?
I'm doing well. I'm recovering. I am getting better, getting stronger every day. Yeah.
Very
High
nice.
energy, as you can tell.
Very nice.
Getting harder, better, faster, stronger.
Yeah, terrifying.
Yes.
Okay, let's kick this off because it's been an epic week and we're already behind as all people are at all times. A lot of shit has happened over the last week. Okay, so let's quickly jump in. So the OCR cut 50 basis points from the interest rates down to 2.5%. So look, let's not get too down in the weeds, but I think the interesting parts to kind of pull out of this is that economic commentators have been pretty split about whether that would happen or not, the degree to which that would happen. Probably half or more than half were saying it should only be 25 basis points. The economists that I've read have been more kind of leaning towards this is not only good, but probably should have happened a long time ago. But to zoom out a little to a more maybe relatable aspect to it, during COVID, rates were down to near zero, and we saw what happened in terms of massively inflated housing market, which made it affordable, but made people who owned homes feel very rich. So there's been a kind of capture, I suppose, of this conversation by the minutiae. And I do think that's interesting because we get sold this conversation about what percentage should the OCR be, when clearly I think the more interesting and relevant conversation to the New Zealand public is, what does that mean for how do I live and how do I afford my groceries and how do I afford to rent and or buy a house, whatever it might be. And there's a pretty repellent kind of disconnect that keeps these things separate. So that's where I've kind of been for the last few days, looking at the reports on this it's basically a two-track kind of conversation. There are business owners / pretty intolerable kind of networking types who have actually, I think it should have been 0.75% conversation. And then there's the people the vast majority of people who also read the news, who are not at all connected to this power structure conversation. So that's where I don't know. That's what I've been thinking about the OCR. Josephine.
So for me, the main thing is when I see the OCR being cut, I see the property investors, rubbing their hands. For a while, we saw the property market, not inflating. So it took a break. Obviously, we can see, for example, reports from property investors saying that, the property prices have been falling significantly. That's from their perspective. I mean, it was still from the inflation peak that it was coming down slightly. It's still very unaffordable market for most people in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And now, again, it'll be easy money for the property investors to get in. I have friends who are trying to buy their first home and they're already feeling that the auctions, the announcement happened and the auctions are now dominated by investors and they can't even get close. So this is what's going to happen. It's going to be a property investors market again, which means that property prices are likely to go up again, making it unaffordable for us. So this is the thing, right? So it goes up to a peak and then the government, relies on that property owner vote. And then, that happened under Labour, but, they let down their voter base. And we get 2023, this new coalition government, and things are going bad. And now they're trying to get that, property owner vote, the investor vote on their side. We'll see how it goes, but it's not good for the people, right? The property price is going up. If it does, I mean, it's likely it will. It's not going to be good for the people. So, no, I mean, the government needs to do far more to make housing more affordable. And if it's going to make these quarter cuts are going to make it more unaffordable. And if we're going to get an investor-dominated market again, it's just, it's not good news.
Yeah, there was I heard an interview recently where an economic pundit was saying John Key used to use consumer confidence to predict political party confidence before he became prime minister, which makes perfect sense, right? If you're a party of capitalists, then that's, essentially the better people feel about how easy their lives are, the more that indicates the next week how they're going to feel about the political operation of the party that has to be responsible for that. And I think there's a reason that he did so well, kind of keeping politics to a minimum and like personality to a maximum over his 8 years as prime minister.
There's this idea that, RBNZ is separate from the political realm, but we saw this shift happening in the RBNZ, Adrian Orr, being thrown out, perhaps, removed, and then we get this new RBNZ chief. Are they a National Party appointee? It seems like it, doesn't it? So it seems to be there's some links between the political sphere and the RBNZ. So this isn't do you know anything about this, Phil? What is your
I would say that every appointee of the Reserve Bank is a National Party appointee functionally in terms of class interests, right? It doesn't make to me a massive difference who the appointee was. It wasn't someone who was massively out of the realm of possibility. It maybe wasn't the exact person he would have thought of, and it wasn't a New Zealander, and that's like the main.
Yeah,
but that's not an intentions difference, right? And I've heard a few interviews with bank economists who are like, finally we have some leadership. So like I don't think they give a shit who it is. Like they know the class of people who it's being picked from. So it doesn't make a huge difference.
Yeah, that's the thing. So remember when Adrian Orr was the chief, and we had that situation where inflation was high, the solutions that even him were offering were like, we need to increase unemployment. So regardless of who's in, the chief of the RBNZ is an institution that operates on behalf of the capitalist class.
That's not even him. Like you say even him, but there's no reason for us to feel any more aligned with Adrian Orr than the next.
Oh, no, absolutely.
I'm agreeing with you, but I'm just saying, like, I think there has been a bit of kind of rose-tinted glasses looking back at Adrian Orr's tenure, which was by no means even like a softer version of the RBNZ. Like the massive capital upflows that came from that fucking tenure is absolutely brutal. And like, there's no reason for us to be nice to him just because Nicola Willis has been mean to him.
No, absolutely. This is the thing that regardless of who's there, this is an institution that operates on these principles. And it's not an institution there to protect the working class. It's there to protect the capitalist system.
Yes, I have to agree that I think discussions about the Reserve Bank as being an independent entity really don't say a whole lot. In part, I think because the Reserve Bank in its current constitution as we know it arrived because it was made so in the 1980s through sort of sweeping changes in said that this is the point at which the Reserve Bank became quote unquote independent, but in many ways, this was a way of entrenching neoliberal policy instead and ensuring that that would be the ideological framework, that kind of monetarism, through which New Zealand would be carried. And to me, then this talk of whether or not, the cash rate is like this, whether or not there's some kind of internal internecine conflicts over this person or that person being part of the Reserve Bank or the appointees being partisan really kind of misses the forest for the trees, which is this idea that separating out, intellectually speaking, the Reserve Bank from Parliament is a way of fully adopting the position that politics is separate from the economy rather than it being political economy, which was a kind of academic and practically ideological shift which occurred in the 20th century as a way of undermining any idea that politicians should be able to make the economy democratic or in some way to serve people's lives rather than to fill the coffers of those who bestride capital. So I think that we should be cognizant as we talk about the rhetoric and the discourse of news media and the press in this country, that the received wisdom about it is a very specific kind of repeated wisdom, which I think they don't consciously understand it, but that kind of received wisdom really comes from what was a conscious political project to ensure that working class people never had their hands on the levers of power in this country or could make the economy work for them, even though they produce the labor which creates the value that drives the economy, and that there could be no real meaningful distribution in the country.
Hell yes. Oh, fire.
Yeah, I agree with that. But at the same time, bringing it under the purview of the parliament, it doesn't guarantee, that it's going to be for the people. Looking at the parliament, for example, right? Like, how do things work there? Do people really have power in parliament? These are questions that we can, or is it a facade to allow the continued dictatorship of the capitalist class? Yeah.
Like on a completely different, entirely different, I'm sure no one will see any parallels between these two conversations. I just want to point out the idea of floating, selling the UFB securities in chorus, which is mostly being very carefully structured as quote unquote not an asset sale, which is like exactly like that. To me, that's the same conversation as like the structuring of the power of this country in a way where your democratic institutions don't actually own power. They're merely adjacent to people who happen to own capital, and the capital owns the power, right? So content warning for all of those at home, cover your ears if this makes you uncomfortable, but I'm going to read out a tweet from Dan Brunskill, which I know is hurtful and will, particularly to our more sane listeners, is going to cause like untold trauma. Okay. Open speech marks. This is how his tweet goes. FYI, the NZ government owns a debt repayment obligation from Chorus. It doesn't own the company. The quote-unquote asset it is considering selling is a debt repayment obligation, not ownership or control of Chorus itself. This is the, like, this, I may be
problem solved.
A simple country economist, but Chorus is regulated by the Commerce Commission. Right? Am I taking crazy pills? Like the company's register has Chorus owned 61% by the National Infrastructure Funding and Financing Limited, which is jointly owned by the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Infrastructure. Like I don't think we're disentangled from the ownership of this organization. And the fact that
it's just a debt interest, Philip. What are you getting so mad about?
Right? This is how these fucking people get you.
The biggest thing has been the total, I guess, like rewriting of history. The thing that I see Twitter economists, quote unquote economists, talking about now in New Zealand is about how, those stupid people thought that the asset sales of the power companies was going to do something bad. Like, aren't they so stupid? We're living in paradise now. And it's like, what?
Yeah, like how much?
Just like telling you up is down, black is white. It's like
it is deranged. Like that's. I mean, another thing is the electricity thing. I'm just going to wrap that into this as well. The government, 3 or 4 days ago, released their, I guess, response finally after 18 months to the recommendations that were made by a committee, blah blah blah, about how to work with our electricity grid or how to change the electricity market. They barely agreed with any of the responses by their fucking picked experts, which I think probably tells you everything you need to know about it, and has been widely regarded as basically just a sop to power companies. Uh, whilst per person residentially, we're using less electricity every single year than we were the year before. So it's not like there's some kind of like brilliant austerity that's taken hold. It's that people are too poor to heat themselves during the winter, and that like technological efficiencies have increased, like the about amount of stuff you can do without burning down a rainforest, you know?
Yeah, because the counterfactual, which is so obvious, is okay, perhaps like on a wholesale level, electricity might be cheaper in this sense, but there are a whole number of other world factors, right? So that's not a question. The
Yeah.
question is, would it be cheaper if there wasn't a corporate middleman? And the answer is yes, you fucking moron.
Yeah, exactly right. So like Ed Miller and Siktar and those people have been doing a really good job of doing the counterfactual of what could this have been like if we hadn't partially privatized during the John Key era. So shareholder dividends since that partial privatization have been higher than investment in new generation when that was never the case before then. So look, this is a pretty fucking like obvious
Cut and
uh,
dried.
comparison,
Yeah.
right? Surprise,
And
surprise.
and one of the big failures has been like an underinvestment in renewables. And they always run back to like, oh well, the sun's not always shining. And it's like, what like I mean, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but what? We're like over 50% hydroelectric generation anyway, which is like the natural battery of renewable generation. You just generate less hydro when the sun is shining, and then you generate the hydro at night. Like,
Sorry, Pmax. Unfortunately, batteries don't exist, so we're going to have to move on from that talking point. Um,
yeah, the
due
great
to the
battery that
inability to store
PolitiFact
power.
checked
yeah.
5 Pinocchios.
Five Pinocchios for Pmax.
But
So
yeah,
anyway,
well,
good. Privatize.
yeah.
Crazy.
Let's go.
And then they want to like start mining New Zealand coal in larger numbers, even though it's like the shittiest coal in the world.
Yeah,
It's
deranged.
like no
Don't
one
get me
wants.
started. Sorry, Josephine wanted to weigh in, I think.
Yeah.
Nuts. Crazy. No, it's just why are Western countries going in this direction? I have no clue. Look at China. China is single-handedly taking the world in this direction of this transition towards renewable energy. Just yesterday, I was reading this report that it's only in Western countries that now there is this push to have more coal-based energy, and it's just so backwards. And they're trying to mine our beautiful West Coast forests now for this low quality coal. And we've got activists putting their bodies on the line to protect these, vulnerable ecosystems on our West Coast. It's really nuts. Like, it's against all research, it's against public interest. It's not even paying attention to what technology exists and how we can harness it and being part of the future. I know that we're in a phase where the West is in decline, but accelerating its decline in this way, in every way, by pulling the world backwards, yeah, it's a joke.
Okay, let's quickly touch on the headline news about the battle between establishment media and Te Pāti Māori over the last week.
Beautiful
Um,
segue, Philip.
Yeah, nailed it. So, Toitū Te Tiriti separated from Te Pāti Māori, whatever that means. They were always separate. Look, this isn't the most PhD level complexity, right? This is an organization, an activist organization that has never been synced with a party, and announcing you're not part of that party, I don't think should make headline news. In the same way as literally you meet people who think that Greenpeace and the Green Party are the same thing. I think it's a little embarrassing to treat that as some kind of like announcement of the week. But anyway, Edu
Listen, those
Kapiti,
people are really used to treating things of the same color the same.
oof, got him. Actually, that's actually a really good point. I mean, that's basically what it's about, right? It is just like unstated carte blanche or carte, whatever the French word for brown is. Okay, moving on. Keep
I
that.
love it.
I actually think that, obviously the media drama was unnecessary around it. But I do think that, I don't know, I do see a huge role that Te Pāti Māori played in that movement. I think Te Pāti Māori was probably one of the key reasons for that kind of mobilization to happen, because they took that struggle to Parliament, and yeah, it became everyone across the world saw it, this clash, and how this government was attacking Indigenous rights in Aotearoa. I think Te Pāti Māori played a huge role in making that such a successful movement. So I was quite taken aback by the split a little bit. I mean, obviously they're not together, like you say, but I don't see why they had to go share that to the public in that specific way, because we already knew that Toitu Tiriti is this protest movement, Te Pāti Māori is a political party. But to me, Te Pāti Māori leaders played a huge role in mobilizing and making that movement successful.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's a difference between saying we're not implicitly tied to this political movement, but also like there's a reason that Edu Kapakingi hadn't done that a year ago, and I think there have been kind of breadcrumbs coming out from Te Pāti Māori about differences of opinion about stuff that, as someone who genuinely has no internal links anymore, or cut anymore, uh, to Pāti Māori, like I don't understand exactly what the factional differences are there, but clearly there's something going on. But that doesn't mean it's any more significant than any other party's internal ructions or differences of opinion. And like it is frustrating to me that the only party treated with what I consider the correct amount of Zoom lens is Te Pāti Māori, when like all parties have these things, right? And it's much more powerful and makes much more of a difference to the apparatus of the state when the National Party has a difference of opinion about how public finances should be spent than when you have to, thought police the difference of opinion between different MPs about whether like phrasing something was like done at an improper time or was it done the wrong way. The Taku Te Ferris thing, right? Is
Mm.
like, is that R word racist or is it like whatever? And every single journalist has to do that. Whereas you don't get any investigation of like a much more powerful party with much more control of the levers of state. Pmax.
Yeah, and it's like current policy in this country is literally sometimes being written in the New Zealand Institute and then sent off to ministers to be like workshopped in. I don't want to sound like an insane person, but there's also like Atlas Network with ACT and then their influence on the government. Those links are not scrutinized to anywhere near the extent that the links between Te Pāti Māori and Toitu Te Tiriti are, despite those links being like weaker, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's undeniable. Like that's the problem, right? I'm completely on board with media being like very critical and incisive and sharp and questioning about internal ructions in political parties, and I think that's actually like part of their function. Ideally, if we had a society where shit worked, that's what I want to see. But why is the only party where they fulfill that role Te Pāti Māori? And why is it normally the way that that's imparted out into the world through a very thick lens of the glasses of establishment media, which has, an implicit level of disingenuous kind of reinterpretation to it. So, for example, like phrases that we hear about this through the mainstream media about like lack of unity or lack of seriousness, where we would never hear that shit about even the ACT Party, which is a much less serious institution. It doesn't have any basis of actual kind of unified community support in the same way as Pāti Māori does. So yeah, I don't know. TLDR, I do think it's good to interrogate parties like this, but I wish any other parties were also interrogated like this.
There's a qualitative difference as well, I think. When you look at something like Toitu Te Tiriti, that's a protest movement, it's democratic, it has an upswell from people. Whereas when you look at the New Zealand initiative or Atlas, that's just the domination of capital. That's just round the like round the table, not round table, but sort of secret meeting kind of politics. It's parapolitics almost. And that's not scrutinized. It's much more important to scrutinize the kind of clandestine components of a very small group in society, which kind of owns and manages everything and wants to run affairs against this kind of democratic movement, and how it might have links with a political party for purposes where they align and then not where they don't. So it's the qualitative difference that I think is also worth touching on with those.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay. Cancel culture, is it good or bad? Winston's window got smashed. This is my
Cue
new
the
this is my
Taylor
new
Swift song, like
yeah, this
I
is my
think I
new
think it's too
introduction
soon.
song.
I think it's
like
too
my
soon.
earpiece cancelled.
Oh, that's too soon.
We should have a minute of silence for the window.
Life of a showboy.
Yeah, yeah. What if the dog got sad? So Winston Peters had a protest outside his house and got very sad about it very quick. Someone smashed his window, but that's the only thing that people are talking about, not the fact that there was a protest there. Look, again, there's like a multitude of ways you could take this. As background and context to this, there was also a an article that came out this week about a quote unquote 19-year-old Gisborne man arrested and charged for making death threats against a member of parliament earlier this year, which now is public knowledge that was Benjamin Doyle, who resigned after a multitude of death threats due to keeping their family safe. And Winston Peters is probably at the top of the list of MPs if you had to list people who love to kind of promote antagonism, let's say, against fellow people in the political world. So, like, I'm probably on the less kind of popular end of the spectrum in terms of thinking that we need to tolerate like a nasty degree of what gets called free speech, but is basically like cruelty in public. But I'm curious what your thoughts have been over the last week because like a lot of people I think have had like boringly good smart people can disagree takes over the last week about like how protests should be managed by the state and kind of what the responses to that should be. Josephine.
Well, again, on this issue, I found that the media failed because the only good takes I found on it were on social media. We saw this news, and then instantly I remembered, oh yeah, a couple of years ago, Hana Raviti's house got invaded, and she's one of the targets of of Winnie in Parliament, and out, he comments on the Pāti Māori members all the time, and there was this indication that did all that insinuate this kind of hatred towards her? Obviously, we don't know. There's links, but that was indicated, and then you get Winston Peters saying, "I'm not responsible for other people's actions," and then this thing happens to him, and we have no idea, who was this guy or what his intentions were, but he just instantly, he becomes a crybaby. He becomes triggered, snowflake, and he says it's Chloe Swarbrook is, has caused this basically. And so it's just this Winston Peters is just, what can I say about him? Why didn't our media question him about this double standard or his hypocrisy? Because this wasn't that long ago. I could remember it, but not nobody in the media remembers it. And they're running headline stories on this stupid issue for like 2, 3 days now. And it's just diverting the attention away from the government's failures. It's actually supporting this failed government, which is, failed on every count, right? Like it's not talking about the foreign policy failures, the fact that New Zealand is isolated itself, even among its own group of, colonizer countries. It's moved to the right even in that group. And then on the domestic front, we're seeing that this government said they're going to reverse the economic direction, but then we're seeing that we got the economy contracted by nearly 1%. But then the media is interested in just, oh, Winston Peters window, RIP, rest in power, just every single day. It's just, and like to the whole insinuation that this one particular activist, peaceful activist, who was protesting legally outside, the foreign minister, former deputy prime minister, a key political operative who has such a big power in determining New Zealand's foreign policy, taking these sorts of decisions which support Israel's position when we have a responsibility under the Genocide Convention to prevent genocide. This group of activists were doing what they should do, holding the powerful to account. She didn't ask anyone to commit violence, and yet this became like a given. Oh, because of this particular woman, because of her, his window got attacked or something.
Yeah.
And she lost a job with a company that she was working with. And it's all gone, and people are just accepting it. And even the Green Party, I was really disappointed in the Green Party's response to the questions around this particular activist, because I think that the Green Party kind of threw her under the bus when they, I think Chloe should have asked them back. Is there any evidence that this is linked to that?
To be
Without the
hang on.
evidence.
Quickly,
Yeah.
Josephine, just quickly to jump in, I think it's important for the listeners to distinguish between, you're talking about two different people, right? The person who broke the window is a different person from the woman, a woman who was at this protest near to
Yeah.
Winston Peters' house, who allegedly shared the address on social media. So, I mean, yeah, I agree that, like, I think the responsible answer to a question about her is it illegal to protest outside people's houses, and if so, when? And like, is it, if behavior is legal and people are exercising their freedom of expression, then who should be condemning that? Like, I think that's probably the kind of just gentle kind of just civil liberties pushback that we don't fucking see anymore, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know, like, I'm not seeing a lot from the Free Speech Union about this, let's say.
Yeah, and the media is in consensus that these activists were in the wrong and all that, right? So that's the kind of approach or angle that they're taking to protect power. Unfortunately, we have a media landscape that protects power rather than holds power to account.
Pmax, do you have something that you've been vibing with on this delightful exercise of freedom of expression over the last week?
Yeah, I mean, not too much more to add beyond what's already been said, but New Zealand has a established history of protesting outside of politicians' homes, most famously with the Polynesian Panther Party during the Dawn raids. Yeah, I think it's really obvious who this rhetoric benefits. Media in this country is failing to do its job of holding power to account, and that's not really news. That's olds at this point.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's still worth noticing and commenting on.
Yeah, hell yeah, definitely.
Simone, one thing that you have, I think, very helpfully kind of railed against is the conflation of people being charged with burglary with the idea that they were going to steal shit. And I think you've done like a massive public service, because I've seen so many people on social media say, actually, it's been proven now that this guy was going to break into Winston Peters' house and steal things, where that is clearly not the case. I see this every day still. And it's very
Okay.
easy now to point to your Three Pinocchios response to that. So I appreciate your public service for that, but what else do you have to chip in?
Winston Peters says the kids need to outlaw smash or pass. What I was gonna say was, a dog is a kind of Pokemon. All I was gonna say was, actually, no, I wasn't gonna say anything because all the things that I have to say, I think Mitch would have to cut.
Oh,
How do I feel
Yeah.
about politicians'
find out.
houses being yeah, well,
Look, Simone, people are allowed to have their personal feelings, and it's clear that this section of the show is Simone's vent hour And we, of course,
No,
do not co-sign any of these people,
this is not endorsed by anybody, including my
including
employers,
yourself.
myself. But it is, it's so yeah. I'm really struggling with the demons this morning because Winston Peters deserves so much worse for what he's done over the years. Um, it is kind of interesting. I mean, look, people talk about this and point this out, and I think it's such a trite point, but really we've got to hammer home the idea that you think about what Parliament does. It's like they can do anything to you. They can crush you underfoot. They can starve you. They can freeze you. They can, force you to work in wage slavery until your body breaks, and then you won't have super because they're gonna take that away, or they'll raise the retirement age, or they can make you suffer while they reap the rewards, and you're not allowed to even make them feel uncomfortable because that's your place in the dirt and you better know it. I think we have to remind politicians who they work for, or who they ought to be working for at least,
And I think
whatever way you interpret that.
And I think this applies to whichever government is in place, It's I see this kind of shifting. Um, when Hannah Rafiti's houses is attacked, we get um, you know, Greens and everyone, or they accuse the right wing, and then when it's Winnie, we get the opposite happening. But I think it applies in both cases that it's people are affected by their decisions, and this is part of being a politician. Obviously, it's it's their decisions have impacts, and people will protest.
Even with the Hanaraf Simaipi Clark situation, this is one where she's not in government and it was just racists who were trying to intimidate her.
That's right.
This is quite there's such a qualitative difference between what's going on there, right? And not somebody who is the deputy prime minister or has been. And, there's just I just have real difficulty not only with saying, oh, well, the media's not treating this as equal. Well, they're not particularly equal, but they have it the exact opposite way around because the news values really are to protect the interests of power always. And it's kind of concerning that Winston Peters can be the real Teflon John, really. Like for decades, he's got away with just pretending to be one thing and then turning to another and whipping up, hatred to try to get over the 5% threshold, and it's never held to account. He can, on the one hand, ride the coattails of Ardern's Labour government and then turn around and pretend to be, a COVID denier kind of crazy person who hates trans people just to get like enough percentage points to get over that threshold. And it's really concerning that he's treated as kind of a lark and a bit of a silly guy by the news. How could they throw a brick through the window of our class clown,
A retiree, a super nuisance,
an
a
old
helpless,
man and attack a dog,
a helpless
a
Maori man,
helpless alcoholic,
an
allegedly,
urban Maori man with substance abuse issues. We
allegedly.
can only speculate. That's really good point, Simone. Like I've also been thinking a lot about hypocrisy recently, and like the way in which people make these comparisons. I do think is like, look, it's a bit of kind of hiding to nothing maybe, but I do think it's an important thing if you want to feel better or internally consistent about your beliefs, then I think it's worth thinking about the previous accusations that have been in a similar vein. And you're right, like the types of people who've been attacked and the reasons for which aren't different from that. There's a kind of squiggly line between those things. And first term young woman Māori MP having her home invaded allegedly, etc., is of a different flavor from someone with what fucking 1,000 years at this point, I think, parliamentary experience, and ex deputy prime minister, ex acting prime minister, just constant,
Those turf
bipartisan.
talking points encourage stochastic terrorism against trans people. I just want to
Yeah,
point that out. Winston
100%.
Peters endangers people all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So like I think if there's going to be any kind of I know this sounds very boring, but I'm sorry to be the boring one on this podcast, but like if there's going to be a philosophically consistent response to stochastic terrorism against people, humans of any kind, from a podium. Like Winston Peters is the first one in the firing line, pun intended, but like that's the kind of person who does endanger people a lot more, right, than anyone else on this list, which doesn't necessarily mean that that's more or less likely to be something that I think the state should interfere in. But I think there's a level of inconsistency, both, I mean, obviously on the right and the centre right in particular. The far right's consistent, right? They want to murder people who they don't like, and they don't want to murder people who they like. But I think kind of liberal and centre right commentators have this inbuilt expectation of who's allowed to bully people and who isn't allowed to bully people that I think has kind of furthered the agenda of implicit cancel culture in our media spheres. I was going to leave a pregnant pause, but jump in, please.
Oh, yeah. And here comes this bill to regulate protests into particular zones. And it's interesting that it's coming from this coalition government with ACT Party in it, you know. ACT Party is a good example of these fake libertarians. They're just conservatives. They got no interest in protecting people's freedoms. I mean, this is a party that is supporting genocide. Wasn't it one of their MPs in Parliament trying to stop people saying the word genocide? What
Simon,
about the freedoms
Simon,
of the
Simon
people in
Court.
Gaza?
Simon Court is a precious baby, and his feelings need to be protected at all costs.
Very thought of this, restricting our freedoms to protest to particular zones. What the hell? And it's coming from the coalition government with ACT in it, and they're not saying anything about it. They're going with it. This is just what, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of so obvious what the game is as well, because to use anything and any excuse to try to ramp up police powers, because the actions that this person allegedly did are able to be criminally charged, as evidenced by the fact that they were criminally charged, right? It
Exactly.
already exists. So, what are you trying to criminalize actually instead? And that's something I would like media to perhaps put their thinking caps on for more than a few seconds about.
And handed themselves in on the same night. Like, what?
Yeah.
How much less intimidating can this vandalism get? Anyway, it's a quick.
And
I just want to
I
remind.
think, yeah, well, I mean, I said this in the server, but I don't know if I should say it actually on the podcast. But like, just for clarification, when we talk about something like burglary, all it means is being in an enclosed yard with the intent to commit a further offense, not actually committing a further offense. And all it has to do is be imprisonable. Literally any imprisonable offense, any of them. This includes offenses in the Summary Offences Act, like, littering. 3-month max. Like it's possible, right? Or graffiti is another good example. I mean, bill sticking is in there. So when we mean enclosed yard, all it has to be is if you have a grass patch in front of your house and there's a hedge around it which has a gate that closes. It might even, be open and then it gets closed behind you. Congratulations. Like if they can construct the intent to commit a further imprisonable offense, 10 years max. Yeah. So burglary really is kind of the charge that means the police hate you or the supermarkets have got it out for you. That's one of those two things, right? That's the distinction really with a lot of other charges that could be slapped on this. And I think people need to understand, the punitive nature of how the elements of offences in New Zealand are constructed in the Crimes Act are probably a little bit surprising to most people.
Definitely, I think so. Like I thought that we as a society, to coin a phrase, may have grown past that, but clearly I'm wrong because every day I'm seeing, I don't know, 5 new people say, actually, I think you'll find this person was not connected to the protest and was planning to break in with a crowbar to steal shit. And my evidence for that is the fact that he was charged with burglary, which
Yeah.
is, look, this is the conversation we've had, I know, many times over the last 5 years, but I think particularly recently, as you've always said and correctly predicted would happen, is that is what the police are going to use because it's the lowest hanging kind of tool, you know? What else are you going to fucking use? It's what you can use to swing against someone who it's pretty easy to kind of nail the elements of the offense. And then if you need to use something, and you want the biggest kind of hammer in your arsenal, that's what you're gonna fucking swing against them. But I wanna as we let's call 10 more minutes. But as we wrap, I just want to bring in a little bit of geopolitics. Josephine, if you can give us a little op shop extraordinaire slash Palestine intro, that we can wrap that into the protest conversation.
Oh yeah, I mean, the main news I think is at the moment, all the genocide supporters across the world are expecting that the Palestine liberation movement needs to be grateful towards them because of this Netanyahu Trump ceasefire deal, and that we should all pack up and go home. I was seeing a lot of the Zionists saying, "Oh, now there's no reason for them to protest." No, this is the thing. So it's the ceasefire deal. We've seen how Israel has broken the ceasefire deals in the past again and again and again, and you know, just continued killing, settlement expansions happening in West Bank. The issue hasn't been resolved at all. So this is the big news right now, and I just wanted to clarify to the Zionists that we're not going anywhere. Our advocacy, our protest actions are going to continue because the issues continue. The issues of Gaza, for example, the siege of Gaza, the blockade of Gaza, has been ongoing for nearly 2 decades now. We need to lift the siege. We need to end the violence and terrorism in the West Bank. And like Bisan from Gaza said, if the ceasefire stands, already there were breaches, by the way. I just want to say this. There were already breaches of the ceasefire in many parts of Gaza. People were killed while they were celebrating the ceasefire. So if it does give a pause, that's good, but this is only a step. It's not an end game. This is not the end. This is only a step towards the liberation of Palestine, if it stands, that is. Like we saw, the January ceasefire was broken by March, and then they made it even worse by cutting aid even more. And then they created an artificial famine and starvation and so forth. So we have to wait and see about this. But obviously, global media and Zionists, supporters of genocides of all stripes, right, have been demanding that we be grateful for the leadership, for example, of the butcher of Gaza. I'm sorry, no.
Yeah. So meanwhile, in little old New Zealand, something was found in an op shop that indicated strategic planning on a level that maybe you shouldn't leave. I don't know. Maybe don't leave your top secret documents in things that you're about to hand away to an op shop, which for our non-New Zealand listeners is short for opportunity shopportunity. It's our secondhand shops. So yeah, there was a release this week as well about a kind of potential, nay, inevitable reorientation against the terrifying power of China giving us a functional electricity market. See the first half of this episode. Yeah, so look, these things do all, as always, link together. There's a geopolitics aspect to all of these things. But yeah, it is quite embarrassing, I think, the level of priorities that have been put on all of these different scary things, because we need to do what, five articles on fucking Winston Peters and Nicola Willis cancelling an actress in a day. But the idea that we as a country are going to reorientate our strategic power, increasingly so towards aligning with US imperialist interests against an imagined threat from China, open brackets, our largest trading partner, close brackets, is a little embarrassing, right? Like, I do think as a nation we deserve both better reporting and better enemies, I think, as the left in New Zealand. Like, it's frustrating,
Yeah.
you know?
Um, it it's it's like the thing about it is it's so suicidal as well. It's such like even if we were to cleave ourselves completely with the American hegemony, we wouldn't get anything out of that. We're not compatible with the United States economy. Like our major exports are politically inconvenient at best for American industries. Like economically, we don't actually like get anything out of it. Like the best bet is we hope to be an imperial outpost. Like that's literally the best outcome is that the United States decides to station hundreds of thousands of soldiers here. Like there's no other positive outcome. I guess there's like the freak stuff with like the war drones that Judith Collins is trying to push through and Rocket Lab, but that's not enough to sustain the entire economy.
Yeah, make no mistake, it's actually detrimental. It's the most detrimental thing for the people in New Zealand to be aligned with the United States because the United States, I mean, is not they themselves are probably the most corrupt nation in the world, oligarchy. Their entire military infrastructure is there to protect the interests of the ultra wealthy over there. And globally, the impact of the US empire and its military network is to crush people's movements that are coming from below, is to crush people's power, it's to crush um, the idea of public ownership of resources because the ruling class, the Western ruling class, and this is the thing, New Zealand is aligned with the US empire not because it benefits the people, it's aligned with the US empire because it benefits the rich people who actually hold power in this country. So they will, for example, they need their trade routes secured with the help of the military network. They need the military network and intelligence network to exist in New Zealand so that they can surveil on activists, they can surveil on, political movements from below. So this is, make no mistake, this is a class war. US presence, military presence, it's their spy bases being present here, their new FBI office, all of this is there to attack us. It's to attack a left from growing. It's to attack activists from challenging the power of capital. So the only people benefiting from this are the colonizers and the capitalists. And the people of New Zealand, in order to, break free and actually achieve sovereignty, or Tino Rangatiratanga, for example, we got to get rid of the US empire. But in this case, like this whole idea to become combat ready or to actually fight China. Like, are you guys ready to be drafted to fight China? Have you seen the Chinese military parade?
Look,
We're not up to it.
yeah. I mean, look, we're pretty good at marching, but not like next to each other. We're good at like wandering. We're good at wandering around. I think a New Zealand military parade would look closer to Trump's military parade.
The squeaky wheels.
Yeah. Yes. If we could afford a wheel, yeah, we'll chuck it in. Yeah, wild, eh? Yeah, and again, the fact that this is not being front-footed is like a bleak as hell.
Well, the summary is that, China's not our enemy. Our enemy is the ruling class and the United States ruling classes, which is currently carrying out genocide, which has carried out so many coups, invasions against leftist and progressive movements across the world. So in terms of when you think about people power, it's not China that's against it. It's actually the United States.
We only have 5 minutes left, so I won't
Go.
push back too much. But I do have a slight
Push
divergence
back
in
more.
opinion about that.
We can
Although
talk
it's certainly like bandwagoning with China is just smarter geopolitically for New Zealand, I think. That's it, really. There's no, I mean, which side is going to give you high-speed rail and which is going to give you school shootings?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Easy calculus to make, right? I was just thinking about the op shop all the time. I keep thinking about how I should go more thrift shopping and find national secrets.
That's where they.
That's all I want to
live,
do.
Simone.
Honestly, great press for the Sallys.
Right? Yeah.
Was it them or was that just like what people were reaching for?
Deep cut. Just yeah, it's this whole thing was actual marketing for op shops in New Zealand.
Yeah, I hope it was like one of the SPCA ones and not like the Salvation Army.
Ideally,
yeah.
See past episodes for problems with the Salvation Army. But yeah, look, if you wanna pick up some state secrets, go down to your local op shop today. Pick up
That's
a
right.
secondhand jumper and a secondhand desk with at least check all the drawers, right?
I do make it a point to stop at the op shops in Wellington each time I go. This time I'll have I'll look a little bit more closely at the book section next time I'm up there. But yeah, hilarious that these secrets are left at an op shop.
Yeah, that's
What a
good.
dumb country. Did anybody have final thoughts they wanted to wrap up with? Philip?
I'm actually against bad things, and I'm not afraid to admit it.
That's a centrist position, I think.
Yeah, as a centrist, I'm actually against all kinds of bad and evil and cruel behavior. Yeah,
I just wanted to say, like, I saw a reaction to, so the article was, written by Nikki Hager, and somebody calling him a communist for writing the article.
actually, I think any expression of personal opinion should be considered communism and treated as such, i.e., praised and shared with all your friends, because I don't know what else what other position you could reach in the year of our Lord 2025. Okay, let's wrap. We're running along. It's been a big week. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for listening. If you've got to the end, that means you love us so much. You probably owe us all a drink if you see us in public. Just saying. We have had Simone. You're unmuted. You're asking for it. How give us a rap.
My name's Simone, and I'm here to say we're finishing 1 or 200 in a clever way.
Hey, and that is
No, I didn't have any final thoughts. But the world keeps turning, and it's so, so, so funny how we've forgotten about Charlie Kirk already. For all that, trying to make him a martyr and gin up like the American surveillance state over this. It's so funny that nobody gives a fuck. Like, and may there be many more.
I mean, in particular, the right. Yeah, maybe, and many more. Yeah, but like,
I mean, I don't think Charlie Kirk's died down if you're in some corners of the internet. He's still alive. There's so many theories going around. I mean, I think I'm not saying Charlie Kirk's alive, but the stories around Charlie Kirk's assassination are very much alive.
Much
right
like
now.
JFK Jr. is going to be back.
Yeah.
I have one thing to say as we wrap up is, if you haven't yet, have a look at the open letter by Uni Workers for Palestine. We're trying to get UniSaver divest from Elbit Systems, Palantir Technologies, and all these horrific corporations that are profiting from the genocide in Gaza and from the US military-industrial complex. So if you are a student, worker at university, ex-student, or a member of the wider community, this is money that you guys pay. This is public money, right? So everyone is a stakeholder when it comes to our public institutions. So please sign that open letter and support us in trying to get a BDS policy passed in UniSaver.
I'll put that in the show notes. Pmax, how are you feeling?
Absolutely fantastic.
Sounds like it.
Perfect. And on that absolute banger of a night, I hope you all have a wonderful week. We will catch you next week with another episode of 1 or 200. Thank you all. Have a great week. We will catch you next time. Bye-bye.
If artificers are, then I'm living a pointless life, but learning all your lessons. Fucking politics, there's no distinction. The road's upon now. It's paid with good intentions, and I'll admit that I'm at a loss for what to say when they quote this as a cost we ought to stay. 'Cause I live amongst the people every day in this vindictive, forgetful fucking rain.